Teaching StarCraft Part 1 Episode 4 Basic Mechanics. In this episode we will be going over concepts such as APM, hotkeys, control groups, queues, multitasking, and in general, efficient use of your keyboard and mouse actions. APM APM is short for actions per minute and measures how quickly you perform actions in the game through mouse or keyboard clicks. StarCraft 2 contains a fairly accurate APM calculator which tells you how fast you are playing, but it can only be used within the observer interface. Most top players play at 200 or more APM. Many will play at 3 to 400 APM on average and can peak at over 600 actions per minute. In order to play this fast, you need to practice basic mechanics and learn how to control your base and army efficiently so that you are not only playing at a high APM, but also making sure that your actions are effective in completing StarCraft objectives. Clicking the 1 and 2 buttons repeatedly may improve your APM drastically, but it will not help you in the game. Hotkeys. The best way to improve your speed and APM is to always be using keyboard hotkeys instead of using the command card. Your mouse hand needs to be constantly moving around and selecting units, using the minimap, or using the very popular right-click command. It doesn't have time to always be moving to the bottom right-hand corner of the screen in order to click on the command card. Also, whenever you move your mouse to the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, your eyes move to that location as well, instead of focusing on the main screen and the minimap. A good way to make sure that you are not clicking on the commands card is to punish yourself anytime you order an action using the command card. For example, here I order an extractor to be built using the command card. I can punish myself by canceling that command with the escape key and then reordering that command using my keyboard to condition myself to doing it correctly. This will slow me down significantly and reminds me not to use the command card in the future. As discussed in the Battle.net episode, if you are having problems with your hotkeys, you can always rebind them. Here I have rebound all of my hotkeys to the left hand side of the screen so that they can be easily hit. Any hotkeys that you cannot hit easily are going to be more likely to be keys that you hit with the command card instead. There is absolutely no excuse not to be using keyboard hotkeys unless your name is Kangho. Control groups. In the previous episode we talked about using Shift and Control to select your units. In addition, Shift and Control allow you to save your selections using the control group system. Your control groups are generally hotkeyed to the number keys, but of course you can change them in settings. To make a new control group or override an existing one, simply select the units you want, press Control, then press a number. For example, Control and 1 will make my current selection Control Group 1. Now, whenever I press 1, I will automatically select Control Group 1. By the way, you can double-click on a control group to center on an army. You can also double-click on armies to select all the units of that type or all structures of that type, but I recommend using the control key instead. Note that you can control group buildings as well. The other way to change control groups is by using the Shift key. Hold down Shift, then press a number to add your current selection to the control group. Note that Control Group 1 now controls both armies at once. You cannot decrease the number of units from a control group except by overriding that control group. An easy way to do that is to select the control group, manually deselect units, then rebind the current control group using Control. There are also hotkeys for idle workers and select army units. They work similarly to control groups, but they should generally not be used. Before moving on to the next section, I want to note some of the important things about using control groups. The most important thing about control groups is that you can select your units not from the main screen, but just simply by pressing the control group hotkeys. This means you can either double-click to look at important locations on the map, or issue commands without looking at your army. This is also extremely useful if you want to build more units from your production facilities without looking at them. Also note that there are camera hotkeys. Camera hotkeys work the same way as control groups, except that instead of saving a selection of units, they save a location on your minimap. I suggest using camera hotkeys to save the location of your various bases so that you can quickly go home and build more structures or check on the status of your base. I also suggest rebinding your camera hotkeys as they start out in a fairly inconvenient location on the keyboard in the standard profile. My camera hotkeys are bound to the F1 through F4 keys. I have also rebound create locations on my camera hotkeys to include Shift F1, Shift F2, Shift F3, and Shift F4 in order to make it easier for me to reach the Shift and F1 keys, since Control and F1 is a little bit uncomfortable for me to reach. You can also rebind your control group hotkeys. I suggest rebinding them so that they are all on the left-hand side of the keyboard so that you can use them with ease. I have rebound 7, 8, and 9 to tilde, Q, and W, and I have rebound the keys that were on tilde, Q, and W to other keys, since Terran, which is my main race, does not generally use these keys. You can simply rebind these keys first, and then find out which keys are no longer bound, and rebind them manually. In general, you should be hotkeying all of your production facilities, as well as various components of your army. Be sure to try and hotkey your different types of production facilities on different hotkeys. You should also try to have separate hotkeys for different types of units, such as air units, very mobile units, and spellcasters. Buildings for upgrades are also commonly hotkeyed. Be sure to use control groups as often as possible in order to make sure you are able to move around the map and still use hotkeys to both produce units and control your units. There are various ways to set up your control groups. There is no standard control group hotkey layout, so be sure to experiment and find out what you are comfortable with. You should be using roughly the same control groups from game to game so you don't confuse yourself over time. Queues. Queuing up units is also a good way of decreasing the APM requirement of a game, since it allows you to ignore certain units or structures for a very long period of time. However, if you think about it, for a perfect player with infinite APM, queuing is almost always worse than not queuing, since it is simply better to issue additional commands as initial commands are completed. This way, new commands are more timely and effective. This is particularly important for queuing up units in a building, since units waiting in line take up resources but don't do anything useful. Obviously, we are not perfect APM users, so we should feel free to queue up just a little bit, particularly with units, since actions do not cost resources. Production queues are a little bit trickier. It is often useful to queue up a single unit in a production facility, especially if the current unit is almost completed building. However, I would restrict yourself to 2 unit queues, and practicing having no more than 2 units in a single queue at once, and instead focus on cycling through your various buildings and continuing to press more production commands. If you find yourself queuing up too many units at once, you can also press the escape key to cancel units or click on the unit in the unit panel to cancel units. Buildings and researches can be cancelled as well. Queuing buildings is also possible. We should only do this with the Protoss race. This will become obvious why when we discuss the various race mechanics. Multitasking. There are many things you need to do very quickly at once in StarCraft 2, and if you slip up on any of these things, you're going to be significantly slowed down in all areas. It is therefore important to be able to do multiple things in quick succession. This is not an easy task, but there are a number of techniques you can use to help improve multitasking. First, you need to be always using hotkeys and control groups, especially for multitasking actions that do not require you to be looking at the screen. For example, production facility management and moving units across maps. Second, you need to know how to make effective use of the automatic AI of your units. Attack moving to a location on the ground means units will automatically engage enemy units, leaving you the ability to focus on other matters. Do not attack directly at units by clicking on them, or you will focus fire that unit and ignore other units that might get in the way. This is not making effective use of the automatic AI and should only be used in specific situations. For beginner players, it is not recommended at all. In general, attacking to a location on the ground is much more effective. Queuing up commands helps with multitasking as well, but has the obvious defect of decreasing effectiveness, so you should pick and choose locations where it is okay to be less effective and more efficient with your attention, and then focus on locations that require more attention to be effective. Again, unless you are very good at controlling your units, attack moving on ground locations with your units is very effective. So do not pay so much attention to your units. In fact, you often do not have to look at your units when they are in battle. Instead, you should focus more on your various production facilities and controlling your economy. Another trick to improve multitasking is to always be thinking about what you need to do next, or to have a plan already in shape. It's a lot easier to do 5 things at once when you already know what those 5 things are, instead of having to figure out what they are as you start doing them. In the next episode, we will be breaking down base management into simple steps so that you can continue cycling through these steps without thinking too hard about what to do, and instead allow you to focus on doing a lot of things extremely quickly. As you get better at the game, you will be able to perform simple actions with less effort. This will allow you to focus on doing many things at once, since doing several simple things at once is easier than doing several difficult things at once. It will also help you focus on pulling off more advanced battle maneuvers, instead of the basic attack command, since you will be able to multitask other simple tasks without them taking up too much of your effort or attention. Before the next episode, play as many games as possible, focusing on hotkeys, control groups, not queuing up units, and multitasking. Continue doing very simple styles of play with little to no strategy, and doing these simple strategies over and over again. Although this may be boring, it will help you embed the boring, repetitive aspects of StarCraft 2 into your head, so that later on you can focus on cooler, more fun aspects of the game with your full attention. You might think of it like practicing dribbling or playing scales on the piano. Everyone wants to shoot the ball or play a complicated song, but they need to get the basics down first, and not only be able to do the basics, but be able to do them without even thinking or having to pay attention to them. A good way to tell if you are progressing nicely is to see if you are able to pay attention to music or a TV show while playing StarCraft 2 without being slowed down. Most top-level players can play fairly effectively while listening or singing along to music, talking to others, or sometimes even eating or watching TV. That's all for now, and I'll see you next time on Teaching StarCraft. If you like Teaching StarCraft, please support me by donating to my PayPal or subscribing to my YouTube channel. You can also follow me on Twitch and Twitter at twitch.tv/AdahnSC and twitter.com/AdahnSC. For more information and timestamps, please check the description below.